The red warning lights flashed across every screen in the galactic monitoring station Kepler-7. Commander Zethkri stared at the readings, his 4 eyes blinking in disbelief. The scanner data had to be wrong. It simply had to be. Run the scan. Again, he ordered his assistant, a young Thraxian named Veltar. Sir, I've run it 12 times already. The results are the same. Veltar's voice shook slightly. A human vessel has crossed the barrier. Zethkri felt his stomach drop. The barrier around the Sol system had stood for 200 years. It was designed by the galaxy's greatest minds, powered by 3 stellar generators, and monitored by the most advanced sensors in known space. Nothing was supposed to get through it, especially not the humans. The humans were dangerous. Everyone knew that. They were young, aggressive, and completely unpredictable. When they had first developed nuclear weapons, the Galactic Council had made the decision to contain them. It was for everyone's safety, they said. The humans needed time to mature, to learn wisdom, to become civilized like the other races of the galaxy. The barrier had worked perfectly for 2 centuries. The humans had tried to break through many times in the early years, sending crude rockets and primitive spacecraft against the energy wall. All had failed. Eventually, they had stopped trying. The galaxy had assumed they had given up and accepted their fate, but now somehow a human ship was flying free in galactic space. What kind of ship is it? Zethkri asked, leaning over the scanner display. That's the strange part, sir. It doesn't match any of our records. The design is completely unknown. It's about 2 kilometers long, gray metal construction, very basic looking, almost primitive. Zethkri studied the image on the screen. The ship did look primitive. It had none of the elegant curves of Altarian vessels or the crystal structures of Zephyrian craft. It was just a big, ugly block of metal with engines on the back. It looked like something a child might build with scrap parts, but it had broken through the barrier. That made it the most dangerous object in the galaxy. Sir, Veltar said quietly, there's something else. The ship isn't alone. What do you mean? I'm detecting smaller craft, dozens of them. They appear to be launching from the main vessel. Zethkri's blood ran cold. An invasion fleet. The humans were finally making their move. 200 years of planning, and they were ready to strike. Back at the galaxy that had imprisoned them. Send an emergency signal to Hegemony Command, he ordered. Priority Alpha. Tell them the containment has failed. The humans are loose. Within minutes, his communication board lit up like a festival display. Calls poured in from across 3 sectors. Admiral Koroth of the Hegemony Defense Corps, General Thaxwin of the Outer Rim Security Force, even Counselor Aethron from the High Council itself. Commander, Admiral Koroth's stern voice crackled through the speakers. Confirm your report. Are you certain this is a human vessel? Yes, sir. The energy signature matches human fusion technology, but it's far more advanced than anything in our files. They've been busy during their containment. Where is the ship heading? Zethkri checked his tracking displays. That's unusual, sir. They're not heading toward any major systems. Their course appears to be toward the Xerion sector. There was silence on the other end of the communication. Xerion was an industrial sector, mostly mining colonies and processing stations. It wasn't a military target. It wasn't even particularly valuable. Sir, Zethkri prompted. Commander, I want you to maintain tracking on that vessel. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. We don't know what weapons they might have developed. The communication ended, leaving Zethkri staring at his screens. The human ship continued on its course, moving at a speed that should have been impossible for such a crude-looking vessel. The smaller craft that had launched from it were spreading out in a formation that looked almost protective. Hours passed. Reports came in from other monitoring stations. The human ship had been detected crossing through the Meridian Passage, past the Vorthan Nebula, always heading toward Xerion. It made no aggressive moves. It didn't respond to any communication attempts. It just kept flying. Zethkri found himself studying the ship's design more carefully. The more he looked at it, the more questions he had. The hull appeared to be made of some kind of composite material he didn't recognize. The engines were clearly fusion-based, but they were producing far more power than should have been possible. And there were strange protrusions along the sides that didn't match any known weapon systems. "Sir," Veltar said suddenly, "I'm picking up something odd." "What now?" "Energy readings from the ship. They don't make sense. I'm detecting medical scanners, atmospheric processors, and what appears to be some kind of biological research equipment." Zethkri frowned. "Medical equipment on a warship?" "That's what the reading suggests, sir. Very advanced medical equipment. More advanced than anything I've seen in our databases." This was getting stranger by the minute. Why would a human invasion force be carrying medical equipment? Unless it wasn't an invasion force at all. But if it wasn't an invasion, what was it? The answer came 12 hours later, when the human ship finally responded to communication attempts. The voice that came through the speakers was calm, confident, and spoke perfect galactic standard. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth ship Defiance. We are not here to cause trouble. We are responding to a distress signal." Zethkri nearly fell out of his chair. "A distress signal? From where?" "Captain Vasquez," he said into his microphone. "This is Commander Zethkri of Galactic Monitoring Station Kepler 7. You have violated the containment barrier around your system. This is an act of war." There was a pause, then what sounded almost like laughter. "Commander, with respect, we never agreed to any containment. We never signed any treaties. We never accepted any barriers. As far as we're concerned, we have every right to travel freely through space." The Galactic Council decreed. "The Galactic Council never asked us what we thought about it," Captain Vasquez interrupted. "But that's not why we're here. We received a distress signal from Zerion Prime. Something about a plague, people dying." "Your people, Commander." Zethkri felt his heart skip a beat. Zerion Prime. The mining colony had gone dark 3 weeks ago. The official report said it was a communication malfunction. But there had been rumors. Whispers about a disease that the medical teams couldn't treat. "How did you receive a distress signal from Zerion Prime?" he asked. "We have good ears, Commander. When people are dying, we listen. And when we can help, we come." The transmission ended, leaving Zethkri staring at his instruments in confusion. The human ship continued toward Zerion, its escort of smaller craft maintaining their protective formation. In the distance, he could see the first ships of Admiral Koroth's fleet moving to intercept. Soon the humans would be surrounded by the most powerful warships in the galaxy. But as Zethkri watched the steady progress of the primitive-looking human vessel, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity was about to change. The humans were no longer contained, and somehow that felt less like a threat and more like the beginning of something completely unexpected. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display as dozens of alien ships moved to surround them. Her crew worked quietly at their stations, completely calm despite being outnumbered 50-1. Elena smiled slightly. The aliens had no idea what they were dealing with. "Captain," said Lieutenant Chen from the communication station, "we're receiving multiple incoming transmissions. Demands to surrender, threats of destruction, the usual diplomatic pleasantries. Put them through, but filter out the worst of the threats. No point in listening to creative descriptions of how they plan to vaporize us." The main screen flickered to life, showing a collection of alien faces. Elena recognized most of the species from the old databases. Hegemony officials, their scales gleaming under harsh lights. Altarians with their multiple eyes blinking in sequence. A few others she'd only seen in historical records. The largest face belonged to someone wearing the elaborate uniform of a hegemony admiral. His scales were dark blue with silver markings that indicated high rank. "Human vessel," the admiral said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "I am Admiral Koroth of the Hegemony Defense Corps. You will immediately shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Your violation of galactic law will not be tolerated." Elena leaned back in her captain's chair, completely relaxed. "Admiral Koroth, I'm Captain Elena Vasquez. Nice to meet you. I'm afraid we can't shut down our engines right now. We have somewhere important to be. You have no choice in the matter. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic conventions. Admiral, with all due respect, we didn't come here to fight. We came here to help. Xerion Prime sent out a distress signal. Their colony is dying from some kind of plague, and they need medical assistance. Elena watched the alien faces on the screen exchange glances. Several of them looked uncomfortable. There is no situation at Xerion Prime, Admiral Koroth said firmly. The colony is operating normally. You have been misinformed. Really? Elena raised an eyebrow. Lieutenant Chen, please play the distress signal we received. The bridge speakers crackled to life with a recording of a desperate voice speaking in broken galactic standard. This is Dr. Mexhai of Xerion Prime Medical Facility. We need help. The plague has spread to 70% of the colony. Our treatments aren't working. People are dying faster than we can treat them. Please, someone help us. We're running out of time. The silence that followed was telling. Elena could see several of the alien officials shifting uncomfortably. That transmission is 3 weeks old, said a new voice. Elena looked at the screen and saw a counselor's robes. The situation has been resolved. Resolved how? Elena asked. Because according to our sensors, there are still 50,000 life signs on that colony, and most of them are showing signs of severe illness. Another uncomfortable silence. How could you possibly know that? Admiral Koroth demanded. Your sensors cannot penetrate our security systems from this distance. Elena smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Admiral, you've been watching us for 200 years, but you haven't been paying very good attention. Did you really think we spent all that time sitting quietly in our solar system doing nothing? The containment barrier prevented any technological advancement beyond basic levels, the counselor said. Our experts confirmed this repeatedly. Your experts were watching the wrong things, Elena replied. You were looking for big engines, powerful weapons, faster ships. You never thought to look for the small things, the important things. She nodded to Lieutenant Chen, who began transmitting data to the alien fleet. What you're receiving now is a complete medical scan of every living being on Xerion Prime. Detailed biological analysis, treatment recommendations, cure protocols. Elena watched as the alien officials stared at their screens, their expressions changing from confusion to shock to something approaching fear. This is impossible, whispered one of them. These readings, this level of detail, our best medical scanners can't produce data like this. That's because you've been using the same technology for the last 1,000 years, Elena said. We've had 2 centuries to think about things differently, to ask different questions, to find better answers. Admiral Koroth's voice was strained. What do you want? We want to save the people on Xerion Prime, that's all. We're not here to conquer anyone or start any wars. We're here because 50,000 people are dying and we can help them. Even if what you claim is true, the Admiral said slowly. Why would you help alien colonists? We are not your people. Elena was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer but somehow more powerful. Admiral, do you know what we learned during our containment? We learned that suffering doesn't care about species. Pain doesn't recognize borders. When someone is dying, it doesn't matter if they have scales or fur or skin like ours. They still hurt. They still hope. They still deserve a chance to live. She stood up from her chair and moved closer to the screen. We spent 200 years, locked away from the galaxy, but we never stopped listening. We heard every distress call that went unanswered, every plague that spread because pride got in the way of asking for help, every colony that died because the bureaucracy moved too slowly. Elena's voice grew stronger. You want to know what humans became during our isolation? We became the people who answer when someone calls for help, even if that someone once locked us away, even if that someone still considers us dangerous, even if that someone would rather let their own people die than admit they need our help. The alien officials stared at her in silence. Elena could see doubt creeping into their expressions. The ship you're looking at isn't our newest design, she continued. It's not our most advanced vessel. The Defiance is 50 years old. We keep her in service because she was the first ship we built after we decided we wouldn't be prisoners anymore. She's a symbol of something your civilization seems to have forgotten. Which is? Admiral Koroth asked quietly. Hope, Elena said simply. The belief that tomorrow can be better than today, that we can solve problems instead of just managing them, that we can help each other instead of just competing with each other. She walked back to her chair and sat down. Now, Admiral, you have a choice. You can try to stop us from reaching Zerion Prime. You can start a war over a medical mission. You can let those 50,000 people die to protect your pride. Elena paused, looking directly at the camera. Or you can get out of our way and let us save some lives. The choice is yours. But either way, we're going to Zerion Prime. The only question is whether we arrive as friends or fight our way through as enemies. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Defiance in silence. Elena's crew continued their work, preparing for whatever came next. On the tactical display, the alien fleet held its position, neither advancing nor retreating. Elena smiled again. Sometimes the best weapon was simply telling the truth. The UES Defiance hung in orbit above Zerion Prime like a gray metal angel. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the ship's main medical bay, watching as the first wave of patients was brought aboard. She had seen many diseases in her 40 years as a doctor, but nothing quite like this. The plague that had struck Zerion Prime was unlike anything in the galactic medical databases. It attacked the nervous system first, then spread to the major organs. The alien doctors on the colony had tried everything they knew, but the disease seemed to adapt to every treatment. Sarah pulled up the detailed scans on her workstation. The pathogen was clever, she had to admit. It modified itself constantly, changing its structure just enough to stay ahead of conventional treatments. No wonder the galactic medical teams had failed, but Sarah wasn't using conventional treatments. Dr. Chen? Called Lieutenant Rodriguez from across the bay. The first patient is ready. Sarah looked over at the examination table where a young hegemony colonist lay unconscious. His scales, normally a bright green, had faded to a sickly yellow. His breathing was shallow and irregular. According to the scans, he had maybe 6 hours left to live. Initialize the medical AI, Sarah said calmly. Run full body scan, cellular level analysis, and start preparing nanite treatment protocols. Around the medical bay, dozens of screens came to life. The ship's medical artificial intelligence began its work, analyzing the patient at a level of detail that was impossible for organic doctors to achieve. Sarah watched as streams of data flowed across the displays. Fascinating, she murmured. The pathogen isn't just adapting randomly, it's learning. Each time the immune system tries to fight it, the disease studies the response and develops countermeasures. Behind her, she heard a gasp. Sarah turned to see Admiral Koroth standing in the doorway, his eyes wide with shock. He had insisted on coming aboard to observe their methods, clearly expecting to find some kind of trick or deception. Doctor, he said slowly, what am I looking at? The future of medicine, Sarah replied simply. Computer, begin nanite deployment. Tiny machines, too small to see with the naked eye, were injected into the patient's bloodstream. These weren't just any nanites. They were adaptive, intelligent, and designed to work together with the body's natural healing processes. The nanites will map every cell in his body, Sarah explained as Admiral Koroth moved closer to watch. They'll identify the disease, study how it operates, and then develop targeted countermeasures, but they won't just attack the pathogen directly. What do you mean? The Admiral asked. Watch, Sarah said, pointing to one of the displays. The screen showed a microscopic view of the patient's bloodstream. Admiral Koroth could see the nanites moving through the blood vessels, but they weren't attacking the disease organisms. Instead, they seemed to be working with the body's immune cells. They're teaching, Sarah said softly. The nanites are showing the immune system how to recognize and fight the pathogen. Not just this version of it, but any future mutations as well. Admiral Koroth stared at the screen in amazement. He had never seen anything like this. Galactic medicine focused on treating symptoms or using broad-spectrum drugs to kill diseases. This was completely different. This was medicine that learned and adapted just like the disease itself. "How is this possible?" he whispered. 200 years of asking different questions, Sarah replied. "Your people see disease as an enemy to be destroyed. We see it as a puzzle to be solved. Your medicine tries to force healing. Ours works with the body to encourage it." On the monitors, the patient's vital signs began to improve. His breathing became stronger and more regular. The sickly yellow color of his scales started to return to normal green. "Doctor, Lieutenant," Rodriguez called out, "we're getting the same results with all the patients in Bay 2. Full recovery in every case." Sarah nodded, but she wasn't surprised. The nanites shared information through a quantum network. Once they learned how to cure one patient, every other nanite in the system would know the solution instantly. "Admiral," Sarah said, turning to face the stunned alien officer, "we'd like to share this treatment with your medical teams. The nanites can be programmed to work with any species biology." "Share it?" Admiral Koroth looked confused. "You would give us this technology?" "Of course. Why wouldn't we? Because it gives you an enormous advantage. Medical technology like this could revolutionize healthcare across the galaxy. It could be worth trillions of credits." Sarah looked at him with genuine puzzlement. "Admiral, people are dying. Why would we keep this to ourselves?" The alien officer opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. He had no answer for that question. In galactic society, advanced technology was hoarded, traded, used as leverage in negotiations. The idea of simply giving it away was incomprehensible. "There's something else you should see," Sarah said, leading him to another section of the medical bay. Here, human medical staff were working alongside alien doctors from the colony. The aliens watched in fascination as the humans demonstrated new techniques, shared data, and explained their methods. "Dr. Mexhi," Sarah called to an elderly hegemony physician, "how are your patients responding?" "Incredible," Dr. Mexhi replied, his voice filled with wonder. "We've learned more about medicine in the past 6 hours than in the previous 6 years. These healing techniques, they're beyond anything we imagined possible. The empathic healing protocols are particularly effective," added Dr. Kim, one of Sarah's colleagues. "When we combine emotional support with physical treatment, the recovery rate increases by 30%. Admiral Koroth frowned. "Empathic healing? We discovered that the mind and body are more connected than most species realize," Dr. Kim explained. "Fear, despair, loneliness, these emotions actually slow down the healing process. But hope, comfort, and human connection can accelerate recovery dramatically." "That's not scientifically possible," the Admiral protested. Dr. Kim smiled gently. "Admiral, respectfully, your science has been stuck in the same patterns for centuries. We've had 200 years to explore new possibilities." As they walked through the medical bay, Admiral Koroth saw things that challenged everything he thought he knew about healthcare. Human doctors who seemed to sense their patients' needs without speaking. Machines that adapted their treatments in real time based on emotional feedback. Healing chambers that somehow promoted cellular regeneration at impossible speeds. But most shocking of all was the attitude of the human medical staff. They worked with a joy and passion that was completely foreign to galactic medicine. They celebrated each recovery, mourned each setback, and treated every patient as if they were family. "Dr. Chen," Admiral Koroth said quietly, "I need to ask you something directly. What do you want in return for this help?" Sarah paused in her work and looked at him with genuine surprise. "Return? Admiral, we don't want anything in return." "That's impossible. No one gives away technology this valuable without expecting something back." "Why is that impossible?" Sarah asked. "We have everything we need. Our people are healthy and happy. Our technology works well. What more could we want?" "Power," the Admiral said automatically. "Territory, resources, influence." Sarah shook her head sadly. "Admiral, we spent 200 years learning that those things don't make people happy. Do you know what does make people happy?" "What?" "Helping others, solving problems, making the universe a little bit better than it was yesterday." She gestured around the medical bay where dozens of patients were recovering from what had been a death sentence just hours before. Look around you, Admiral. Look at your people getting well. Look at your doctors learning new ways to heal. Tell me that's not more valuable than power or territory. Admiral Korath was quiet for a long moment, watching the activity around them. Slowly, something began to change in his expression. The suspicion and fear were replaced by something else, something that looked almost like hope. "Doctor," he said finally, "I think I'm beginning to understand what humans became during their isolation." "What's that?" Sarah asked. "Something the galaxy has forgotten how to be," he replied softly. "Healers." 3 days after the Defiance had arrived at Xerion Prime, Admiral Korath received the report that changed everything. Every single patient on the colony had been cured. 50,000 people who had been dying were now healthy and walking around. The human medical team had accomplished in 72 hours what the galaxy's best doctors couldn't do in 3 weeks. But that wasn't the part that worried him. The part that worried him was the data his intelligence teams had been gathering about the human ship itself. The more they studied it, the more questions they had, and the answers to those questions were keeping him awake at night. Korath stood in his flagship's situation room, staring at a holographic display of the Defiance. Around him, his senior staff waited nervously for his orders. "Tell me again about the ship's construction," he said to Commander Vexhai, his intelligence officer. "Sir, the hull appears to be made from a composite material we can't identify. It's stronger than duralloy, but somehow lighter than standard plasteel. The energy signature suggests it's partially organic." "Organic hull material?" "Yes, sir. It seems to be alive in some way. Self-repairing. We've observed minor damage to the outer hull healing itself within minutes." Korath felt a chill run down his spine. Self-healing spacecraft were theoretical at best. The engineering challenges were supposedly impossible to overcome. What about their engines? "That's where it gets really strange, sir," said Chief Engineer Zorthak. "They're using fusion technology, but it's unlike anything in our databases. The power output is at least 10 times what should be possible from a reactor that size." "How?" "We don't know, sir. The energy readings suggest they found a way to make fusion reactions more efficient. Much more efficient. They're getting nearly perfect mass-to-energy conversion." Korath studied the display more carefully. "Weapons? That's the oddest part," Commander Vexhai said. "We can't detect any conventional weapon systems. No plasma cannons, no missile launchers, no energy projectors. They must have weapons. No one builds a ship that size without weapons." "Sir," said Lieutenant Kexna from the tactical station, "we've been monitoring their smaller craft, the ones they deployed when they first arrived." "What about them?" "They're not fighters, sir. They're medical evacuation ships. Each one is equipped with emergency surgical suites and life support systems. They've been shuttling patients between the colony and the main ship." Korath frowned. An invasion fleet that brought medical ships instead of fighters. It made no sense according to any military doctrine he'd ever studied. "Sir," Commander Vexhai said quietly, "there's something else. We've been analyzing their communication systems. And they're not using subspace radio like everyone else. They're using something called quantum entanglement communication. Instantaneous transmission across any distance. That's impossible. Quantum entanglement communication is purely theoretical." "Not anymore, sir. They've been maintaining real-time contact with their home system throughout this entire mission. No delay, no signal degradation." Korath sat down heavily in his command chair. Each new piece of information made the situation more disturbing. The humans hadn't just escaped their containment. They had somehow leapfrogged centuries of technological development. "How many ships like this do they have?" he asked. The silence that followed was answer enough. "We don't know, sir," Commander Vexhai finally admitted. "Our intelligence on human space has been limited to what we could observe from outside the barrier. We know they have colonies throughout their solar system, but we have no idea what kind of fleet they've built." "Sir," Lieutenant Kexna said, "suddenly, we're receiving a transmission from the human ship." On screen, Captain Vasquez appeared on the main display, looking as calm and confident as ever. Behind her, Koroth could see the bridge of the Defiance. It was unlike any starship bridge he'd ever seen. There were plants growing in integrated planters. The lighting was soft and natural. The crew moved with easy efficiency, completely relaxed despite being surrounded by alien warships. "Admiral Koroth," Captain Vasquez said with a slight smile, "I hope you don't mind the interruption. I thought you might like an update on our progress." "What kind of update?" Koroth asked cautiously. "The medical situation on Zerion Prime has been completely resolved. All patients have been cured and are expected to make full recoveries. We've also shared our treatment protocols with the local medical staff, so they'll be able to handle similar situations in the future." "That's good news," Koroth said, though he wasn't sure why the humans were telling him this. "There is one small matter we need to discuss," Captain Vasquez continued. "During our medical scans of the colony, we discovered something concerning." Koroth felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of concerning?" "The plague wasn't natural, Admiral. It was engineered." The silence on the bridge was deafening. Koroth stared at the screen, his mind racing. An engineered plague meant biological warfare. It meant someone had deliberately tried to wipe out the colony. "That's a serious accusation, Captain," he said, carefully. "It's not an accusation, Admiral, it's a fact. Our analysis is conclusive. Someone created this disease specifically to target the genetic markers of the hegemony species." Captain Vasquez leaned forward slightly. "The question is, who would want to kill 50,000 innocent colonists?" Koroth's blood ran cold. He knew exactly who would benefit from the destruction of Zerion Prime. The mining rights for the entire system would revert to the Galactic Council, who could then redistribute them to more politically favored species. "Captain," he said slowly, "what are you going to do with this information?" "We're going to share it," she replied simply. "With everyone. The colonists, the hegemony government, the Galactic Council, and anyone else who wants to know the truth. The truth could be destabilizing. Admiral, do you know what we've learned about truth during our isolation?" "What?" "The truth doesn't become less true just because it's inconvenient. And lies don't become more acceptable just because they're comfortable." Captain Vasquez stood up from her chair. "We're going to be leaving Zerion Prime soon, Admiral. Our work here is done. But before we go, I want to tell you something." "What?" "This ship, the Defiance, isn't our most advanced vessel. It's not even close. It's 50 years old, Admiral. It's practically an antique by our current standards." Koroth felt the blood drain from his face. If this ship was 50 years old, what were their current ships capable of? "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because I want you to understand something," Captain Vasquez said seriously. "We didn't come here to show off our technology or prove how advanced we've become. We came here to save lives. That's what we do now. That's what we've become." She paused, looking directly at the camera. "The galaxy spent 200 years trying to contain us because you thought we were dangerous. You were right. We are dangerous, but not in the way you expected." "What do you mean?" "We're dangerous to ignorance. We're dangerous to suffering. We're dangerous to the idea that some problems can't be solved or some people can't be helped." Captain Vasquez smiled again, but this time there was something almost sad about it. "We're dangerous to the status quo, Admiral. We're dangerous to the idea that this is just how things are and how they'll always be." The transmission ended, leaving Koroth staring at a blank screen. Around him, his staff waited for orders. But for the first time in his long military career, Admiral Koroth had no idea what to do next. The humans weren't just free. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before, something that made all their assumptions obsolete, and they were just getting started. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within days, every civilized world knew about Zerion Prime, about the miracle cure, about the humans who had appeared from nowhere to save 50,000 lives, about the evidence of biological warfare that someone had tried to cover up. On the capital world of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions ran around the clock. Counselor Ethron stood before the assembled delegates, his usual composure cracking under the pressure of questions he couldn't answer. "The humans claim their ship is 50 years old. demanded Delegate Vorthon of the Altarian Republic. If this is their obsolete technology, what are their current capabilities? We don't know, Etheron admitted. Our intelligence on human space has been severely limited. Limited? Shrieked Delegate Hextar from the Crystalline Collective. You mean non-existent? We've been blind for 200 years. The containment barrier was deemed sufficient. The containment barrier failed, Delegate Vorthon interrupted. And now we discover that while we've been stagnating, the humans have been developing technologies that make our finest achievements look primitive. In the viewing gallery above the main floor, Admiral Koroth watched the proceedings with growing unease. He had been summoned to give testimony about his encounter with the Defiance, but the more he thought about what he had witnessed, the more troubled he became. The humans hadn't just broken free from their containment. They had evolved beyond anything the galaxy understood. And they had done it while the Galactic Council congratulated itself on keeping the dangerous humans safely locked away. Admiral Koroth, Counselor Etheron called. Please share your observations with the Council. Koroth descended to the speaking platform, aware that his words could shape the galaxy's response to this new reality. Honored delegates, he began. I have spent 40 years in military service. I have commanded fleets, fought in 3 wars, and studied every known form of warfare and technology. He paused, looking around the chamber. Nothing in my experience prepared me for what I witnessed at Zerion Prime. The chamber fell silent. The human vessel showed capabilities that our scientists claim are impossible. Self-healing hull materials, fusion reactors with near-perfect efficiency, medical technology that can cure diseases our best doctors can't even understand. Surely you exaggerate, Delegate Hextar protested. I wish I did, Koroth replied grimly. But what disturbs me most isn't their technology. It's their attitude. Explain. They came to save lives. Not to conquer, not to demand tribute, not to establish dominance. They came because people were dying and they could help. Koroth's voice grew stronger. They shared their medical knowledge freely. They worked alongside our doctors as equals. They asked for nothing in return. When they discovered evidence of biological warfare, they didn't use it as leverage. They simply revealed the truth. Surely they have some agenda, Delegate Vorthon said. No civilization acts without self-interest. That's what I thought too, Koroth admitted. But I was wrong. They do have an agenda, it's just not what we expected. Which is, they want to help. That's it. They want to solve problems, heal the sick, and make the galaxy a better place. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Several delegates looked skeptical. Admiral, Counselor Etheron said carefully, are you suggesting the humans pose no threat? Koroth was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words sent chills through the assembly. No, Counselor. I'm suggesting they pose the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced. I don't understand. They threaten everything we've built our civilization on: competition, scarcity, the idea that advanced technology should be hoarded and used for advantage, the belief that some problems are unsolvable and some suffering is inevitable. Koroth looked directly at Counselor Etheron. They threaten the very foundations of galactic politics. Because if the humans are right, if cooperation and sharing actually work better than competition and secrecy, then we've been doing everything wrong for 10,000 years. The chamber fell silent again. The implications of Koroth's words were staggering. What do you recommend? Etheron asked quietly. Before Koroth could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. Emergency broadcasts lit up every screen. This is Fleet Command, came an urgent voice. We have multiple contacts entering galactic core space. Repeat, multiple unknown vessels are approaching the capital system. The main display showed tactical readings that made no sense. Dozens of ships had appeared simultaneously, as if they had materialized out of nothing. Size and configuration? Etheron demanded. Various sizes, sir. The largest appears to be approximately 5 kilometers long. Design unknown. They're not matching any vessels in our databases. On the screen, images began to appear. Ships of elegant design, clearly advanced but somehow organic-looking. They moved with fluid grace, more like living creatures than mechanical constructs. "Sir," the voice from Fleet Command continued, "we're receiving a transmission." "Put it through." Captain Vasquez appeared on the main screen, but she wasn't on the bridge of the Defiance anymore. She stood in what looked like a garden, with plants and flowing water visible behind her. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council," she said with a respectful nod. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez, representing the United Colonies of Humanity. We come in peace." "Captain Vasquez," Counselor Etheron said, his voice tight with tension, "you are in violation of numerous galactic laws. Your fleet is here by invitation," Captain Vasquez interrupted gently. "We've received over 3,000 requests for medical assistance from worlds across the galaxy. Plagues, genetic disorders, medical emergencies that local authorities can't handle." She gestured to someone off-screen, and the display changed to show a map of the galaxy with thousands of blinking lights. Each light represents a call for help. Each one is a group of people who are suffering and who believe we might be able to help them. "Those requests were not authorized by proper channels," Etheron protested. "Counselor, with respect, when someone is dying, they don't care about proper channels, they care about living." Captain Vasquez stepped closer to the camera. "We're not here to challenge your authority or disrupt your government. We're here to offer our assistance to anyone who wants it. And if we refuse, then we'll leave," she said simply. "We won't force our help on anyone, but we won't be contained anymore either." "What do you want?" Etheron asked. "We want to share," Captain Vasquez replied. "Our medical knowledge, our agricultural techniques, our approach to solving problems. We want to teach what we've learned and learn from what you know." She paused, and her expression grew more serious. "The galaxy is vast, Counselor. There's room for all of us. There are problems that need solving, people who need help, and wonders we haven't even imagined yet. And if we refuse to cooperate, Captain," Vasquez smiled sadly, "then you'll be left behind. Not by us, but by your own people. Because once they see what's possible, once they understand that suffering isn't inevitable and problems can be solved, they won't be content with the old ways anymore." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Admiral Koroth looked around at the faces of the galactic leadership. Some showed fear, others showed anger. A few showed something that might have been hope. "The age of containment is over," he said quietly. "The question now is whether we'll be partners in what comes next or obstacles to be worked around." Outside the chamber windows, the human fleet hung in space like a promise of tomorrow. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps, Admiral, Koroth thought, that wasn't such a bad thing after all. In the days that followed, as human medical ships spread across the galaxy answering calls for help, as their agricultural specialists shared techniques that could feed billions, as their engineers offered solutions to problems that had plagued civilizations for centuries, one thing became clear. The humans had kept their word. They had come not as conquerors, but as healers. Not as masters, but as partners. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had discovered during their long isolation, that the universe was vast enough for everyone, and that the only boundaries that truly mattered were the ones people chose to accept. The age of limits was ending. The age of possibilities had begun.